Hello, today we will be building on what we had learned in our first Excel video, and we will be learning how to use Excel as a basic database. So what we're looking at here is a really basic database. In the rows we have our records. So for example, row 2 we have the record for Eve Collins, row 3 for Elise Smith, and so on and so forth. And in the columns we have our fields. So we have the field here for last name in column A, the field for first name in column B, and so on and so forth. So if you want to add new records to your database, the easiest way to do it is just to add it at the end of your database here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cell A20, and then I'm going to go ahead and type in a new record into row 20. So I'm going to type in the new record here. And an easy way to move from cell to cell when you're typing in a record going across like this is to just hit the tab key on your keyboard. And another thing you're going to notice when I start typing in the record here for Busey Bike Shop, you're going to see buds and blossoms appear. This is because what Excel does is it looks up through the field to see if there's information that matches it. And if I were typing in buds and blossoms, I could just hit enter here and it would go ahead and put in that information, but I'm actually typing in something else. And so if I just continue typing, it'll remove that and it'll keep putting in what I'm typing here. And another thing I'm going to do here is I'm leaving this last field blank for the attended field. In an Excel database, you can have cells that are empty if you don't have information from them. So since I don't know if they attended our last meeting, I'm leaving this one blank. However, in an Excel database, you can't have a completely blank row or a completely blank column because Microsoft Excel will interpret that as the end of the database. So for example, here, if I insert a new row here, Microsoft Excel is going to interpret this database as ending on row 19 and a new one beginning on row 21 because this row here is completely blank. So I could have blank cells, but not a completely blank row. And something people like to do with their databases, besides add new records into it, is they like to sort it or filter it. And I'm going to cover two different ways you can sort your database. One of the ways you can sort your database, and this is probably the easiest way, is just to do a quick sort. So like let's say I wanted to sort this database alphabetically by last name. To do that, I would just select a cell in the last name column here, and I could go ahead and I could right click on that. And when I right click on it, I see a menu that comes up, and one of my options here is sort. And then from here I could just choose sort A to Z, and when I choose sort A to Z, it now sorts this alphabetically by last name. Now one of the things you're going to notice here is that when it's sorted alphabetically by last name, it did not include the last name field heading or in the sort. And that is because we set it apart by making it bold. Microsoft Excel is always looking to see if you're setting up a database, and if you set up your database and you make your column headings different from the records that come beneath it, most commonly it's done by making it bold, but you can also underline them or change the color as well. But if you do that to set it apart, it will not include it in any sorts. So last name still stays at the top, even though we did a sort on column A. Another type of sort that you can do is a sort that adds a then by. So for example, let's say we wanted to sort first by state and then by city alphabetically. We could do that by doing a sort by bringing it up through our ribbon area here. So instead of being on the home ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and click on the data ribbon here, and you'll see that you've got an option here for sort. So I can go ahead and click on that, and that'll bring up our sort dialog box here. And it gives us an option to choose sort by, and right now it's sorted by last name A to Z, but we can change that to state. So it's going to sort alphabetically by state A to Z. And then if I click on this plus sign here, that's going to add a level. And the level it's going to add is a then by. So first it's going to sort alphabetically by state, and then I'm going to go ahead and choose city. So then it's going to sort alphabetically within the states. It's going to sort by city alphabetically. So if I go ahead and choose OK, you'll see that our database is now sorted first by state. So all the cities that are in Illinois come up first. And then within the state, we have our cities sorted alphabetically as well. Another feature people like to use with their database in Excel is filter. And what filter will do is it will hide all the records that don't match the criteria you are filtering on, and will just display the records that meet that criteria. So for example, if I wanted to filter this database and just see the people who attended our last sales meeting, I can do that by going into first I have to make sure that I'm in the data ribbon here, and then next to the sort you'll see an icon for filter. So I could go ahead and click on filter, and when I click on filter, you'll see these little drop down arrows appear by our column headings. And these drop down arrows will give us the ability to filter on an item in that column heading here. So for example, I want to filter on attended and just see the records for those people who attended our last meeting. So I'm going to click on the drop down arrow here, and I'm going to choose from the boxes here. I'm going to take out select all, and I've got no, yes, and blanks because we do have one blank record here, or one record where we have a blank for attended, and I just want to see those that attended. So I'm just going to put a check in the box for yes, and then I'll click on the red to close that out, and now I'm just seeing the records for those people who attended our last meeting. Now we didn't delete anything out, and we could tell that things aren't deleted out here because we see that it goes from row 1 to row 2 to row 4 to row 7 to row 8. So it's not deleting out the records, it's just hiding those records from our view, so we can just see those who attended our last meeting. And we can also filter on more than one column heading. So for example, if we just wanted to see all that attended from the state of Illinois, I can click here on the drop down arrow for state, take out select all, and then just choose Illinois, and then go ahead, and now we're just seeing all the people who attended from the state of Illinois. And if we want to clear out what we're filtering on and see our entire database again, we could just simply click on clear here, and that'll clear out all our filters, and now we're back to seeing our entire database. Another useful way to use the filtering is you can use filtering to just find one specific record in your database. For example, let's say we had hundreds of records and not just 20 here in our database, and we wanted to find the record for, let's see here, I'll pick a name, I'll pick Ilaria. We wanted to just find this record here for Ilaria and display that record, but we had hundreds of names, so it's not easy to see like it is here. In that case, we could go ahead and click on the drop down arrow by last name, and then we could go ahead and we can type in here in the search box. We can start typing in the name of the last name here. So I can start typing in Ilaria. And once I type in the first two letters here, it filters out everything else, and it gives us just this one specific record. And then if I wanted to unfilter again, I could go ahead and click on clear, and that'll show us our entire database again. And to turn off the filtering, if we wanted to turn off the filtering now, we could just simply click on the filter icon again, and that will turn off our filtering so we can no longer filter. Another useful feature is you can freeze the top row to the top of the page, so that way no matter how much you scroll down here, that top row is always going to appear at the top of the page. And this is called freezing panes. And so to freeze the top row to the top of the page here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the cell in column A underneath where our top row is here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the View tab, and under View we've got the option to freeze panes. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Freeze Panes, and that knows to freeze the panes above the row that we've currently selected. So I'd currently selected something in row 2, so now it adds this little line here, and so now row 1 is frozen to the top. So no matter how far down I scroll, our column headings are going to appear above our records, so we can know that the first field is last name, the second field is first name, and so on and so forth. And if you want to unfreeze the panes now, so that way the top row isn't pinned to the top here, you could just go ahead and then choose unfreeze, and that will unfreeze the top row. You also had the option here to just freeze top row by clicking on that as well. That would have just frozen the top row as well. Now, freezing panes does not work for printing out. And what I mean by that is, let's say you've got hundreds of records here and you're going to print out this information, and you wanted the column headings to appear on the top row of each page that you print out. Freezing panes doesn't do that function. In order to do that, you would have to do what they call print titles. And to print titles, you would go into page layout, and under the page layout ribbon, you'll see an option here for printing titles. And so what you can do is you can click on that, and that'll bring up your page setup dialog box, and then you have your print titles here, rows to be repeated at top. So I can select into this box here, and then I could go ahead and I could just click on row 1 from here. And if I click on row 1, it automatically inputs row 1 here to repeat at the top when you're going to print out. And then if I click OK there, you won't see anything different on your screen, but now if I were to print this out, our column headings would print out on the top of each page that we're printing out. Next, we're going to show you how you can establish pivot tables, but we're not going to use this database for creating pivot tables and pivot charts. So I'm going to close out of this database and open up a new database, and we'll use that one to create our pivot tables and charts. Okay, so now I have a new Excel database opened up here. And in this database, you can see that we've got our who, our week, our what, and our amount. And there's different information in each field here. So for example, here we've got 3 names. We've got Joe, Beth, and Janet. They either brought something in week 3, week 4, or week 5, and then they brought something. They either brought soda, food, or car items, and then they all brought different amounts. Now from this database, we cannot tell how many soda items Janet brought in week 5, because she might be in here a couple times. You see Janet in week 5 also brought some more soda items here. So we don't know that. But what a pivot table can do is it can analyze this information and tell us that. So we can find out exactly what Janet brought in week 5, and we could see how many soda items, food items, or whatnot she brought, as long as Joe and Beth as well. So to create our pivot table, first what we're going to do is we have to go into the Insert tab here. And so we have our Insert ribbon up. And then we can go ahead and click on the icon here for a pivot table. So just click on that. And it brings up our pivot table dialog box, and it gives us the data that we want to analyze. And by default, it's selecting our entire database here, so we don't have to change this. And we want to put this, we'll go ahead and put it on a new worksheet. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and this will open up a new worksheet to the left of the sheet we're on, because we were on sheet 1 here. So put a new worksheet here, and it created our pivot table here. And so now what we can do is we can put in our different field headings into the columns, rows, values, and filters box, so that way we can analyze the information and see how many soda items Janet brought in week 5. So there's a couple different ways we could set up our pivot table to find that information, and I'll show you a couple different ways we can do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose what I want for my columns and rows. And in this case, I'm going to choose what they brought as the for the columns there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on what and just drop that into the columns. And you see here in our pivot table, now, we are seeing that they brought car, food, and soda items. Those are our 3 types of information we put into that, to the what column. If we had another one, if we had something for, say, cat food or something like that, it would show car, food, soda, and cat food items. So it's just displaying those 3 items there. And then we're going to choose the week, and we're going to put that in as the rows, so we can see what week people brought the information, week 3, 4, and 5. If we had a week 6, again, that would be displaying here as well. And then we're going to choose for the values, we're going to choose the amount that they brought. And so now we're seeing in here the amount of car items, food items, and soda items, and the grand totals. They've added a grand totals one. And then for our filter, we're going to choose who and drop that into our filter here. And so who is appearing in our filter, and with our filter we can then choose a specific person, because we wanted to see what Janet brought. And because right now we're seeing what everybody brought. In week 3, everybody, the combination of Joe, Beth, and Janet brought 39 car items, 49 food items, 52 soda items, and a grand total of 140 items. But if we change that to just Janet and just select Janet, now we're seeing just what Janet brought. And we could see that in week 5, Janet brought a total of 33 soda items. And so there were a couple of different ways that we could have found out that Janet brought 33 soda items in week 5. This was just the first week that I came up with. But we could have actually had the weeks be our filter, and we could have had the who be in our rows here. And so if I go ahead and let me just take out who and week and then drop them in our different places. So we put the who down for the rows and the week for the filters. And now what we've got is, for some reason, the who is just showing Janet. We filter that out to Janet. Because we had chosen Janet as the filter before, it's keeping them here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all. And now we're seeing what everybody brought, and we can use our filter here at the top and just choose week 5. And then for week 5, we could then see that Janet also brought 33 soda items here. So it's just a different way of displaying it, just depending on which one we chose for our rows versus which one we chose for our filter here. Another thing we could have done here is, instead of creating a pivot table, we could have created a pivot chart. And I'll talk to you, and it's basically the same process. You just would select pivot chart instead of pivot table. So I'll go ahead and show that real quick. So I'm going to go back to sheet 1 here, which contained our data, and then I'm going to go to insert, and instead of choosing pivot table here, I'm going to choose pivot chart, which is down by the middle here. And when I click on that, just like before, it chooses our table range here. And most of the time that's correct, as long as you have a cell selected within the table here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to put it on a new worksheet to the left of what we've got. And instead of, it's going to create a pivot table too, but it's also going to create a chart as well that we see here. And so if I go ahead and recreate what we did before, so I'm going to go ahead and put who into the rows there, and then what into the columns, and then week as the filter, and then the amount as the values, and voila, it creates a chart as well as creating the table here. So now we've got a chart that will display what people brought as well.